So lately there's been a lot of rumors in regards to the alleged remake of Resident Evil 1 Remake, with even more rumors dropping within the past week or so. But according to a reliable industry insider, none of this is actually happening. So just to catch people up to speed, over the past couple of weeks or so, there's been rumors in regards to Resident Evil 9, what that next game could potentially entail, and then somewhere along the way, rumors for a remake of RE1 Remake also popped up, and people were quoting Dusk Golem in the sources saying that this person heard about the remake and that's why people decided to run with that information. Well, turns out that's not true. Dusk Golem was not involved with any of this stuff, and they themselves haven't heard about this alleged remake happening within Capcom. So they took to Twitter to say, "For the record, I've never commented anywhere that a new remake of RE1 is happening for the series' 30th anniversary in any way. Multiple people online have tried to attach that to me, but I've never said anything of the sort, in big part since I think the rumor is BS." So I've done a bit of research on Dusk Golem, we even sourced them in a previous video, and their track record seems to be pretty consistent, especially when it comes to the rumors of Resident Evil 9. A lot of the stuff they've been putting out there does make sense, and it's all been, again, fairly consistent. They're also followed by people within the industry that I would consider to be trustworthy. So if Dusk Golem says this isn't happening and they haven't heard of a remake, I'm going to tend to believe them. And taking a look at some of those recent rumors that came out, looking at them, it kind of feels like, yeah, some of this stuff kind of seems like a no-brainer, and then some of the stuff included just kind of feels really was thrown together just kind of last minute. But in the spirit of speculation and just having fun, we're going to take a look at these rumors anyway and kind of use them as a jumping off point to go, hey, if Capcom were to decide to remake RE1 Remake one day, what would they do, how would they do it, and what would I personally like to see? So these rumors came from a YouTube channel by the name of Biohazard Declassified, and they were saying that they received an anonymous email in regards to this alleged remake of RE1. And apparently this source has had this information for a long time, but they've been sitting on it until now. Why wait until now? I don't know. Maybe they were just figuring out, hey, none of this stuff is real, but I want to get my name out there. So now that Dusk Golem is reporting on RE9, I'm just going to throw my stuff out there and hope that it sticks. So again, all of these rumors, take them with a massive grain of salt. We're just using them purely as fan speculation to talk about a remake for RE1. So they claim that the working title is Biohazard RE1, which again, working titles don't necessarily mean final titles. So many games have so many different working titles until they decide on the final one. But if you were to call it Biohazard RE1, I think that would be fine. It separates it from the original remake, and using Biohazard more often is super cool. That's what it's called in Japan. They couldn't do that here in America because trademarking Biohazard is super hard, and there was already a metal band by that name, so it would have been a little too confusing. And then of course we had Resident Evil 7, which had the subtitle Biohazard. Now these next few things seem kind of obvious. The pace will be slower, even more so than RE2 Remake. Each zombie will have their own unique model due to the small number of enemies within the game, and more bullets will be required to take out the RE1 Remake zombies compared to the RE2 Remake zombies, and these new zombies are being quoted as being bullet sponges, which all of that kind of feels pretty duh. The original RE1 is a slow-paced game. It's survival horror. It's managing resources. You're not encouraged to fight every single enemy that shows up. You're actually encouraged to run away and be smart about some of these situations. So the mansion, the courtyard, the underground caverns, the Umbrella facility, they weren't crawling with a ton of zombies and monsters. Because again, it was survival horror. It was meant to build up tension. You were meant to explore, gather resources and key items, and solve puzzles. And I would also expect the zombies to be more bullet spongy because again, this is a brand new situation for these characters. Chris, Jill, the rest of Star's team, they've never encountered a zombie or any type of bioweapon, so they're gonna take a lot of bullets to try and take these things out before they learn how to do it effectively later on in the franchise. And having unique enemies would also make sense and be pretty cool because again, this is an Umbrella research facility. Essentially, this mansion was a testing ground where people worked, so there wasn't a ton of people there. It's not going to be loaded with monsters and zombies. You're going to have a few here and there that all should look relatively unique from one another. And the bullet sponges in RE2 Remake were a little frustrating at times. You would just unload an entire clip on a zombie, they would fall to the ground, you would think they were dead, and then they would just pop right back up and start attacking you again, which was a little frustrating. So I don't want them to go overboard in a remake with the bullet sponginess. I feel like there should be effective ways to take out these zombies without unloading two massive clips into them, but you never know what would happen. Another thing that this rumor mentions that I would like to see happen is the return of the Crimson Heads. Now, the Crimson Heads were a new addition in RE1 Remake on GameCube back in the day, and they were super cool and super scary. And I remember my first encounter with one where I took out a zombie, I left that area, I came back, and the body was still on the ground, which I was not used to. And then the next thing I know, the body reanimates, springs to life, and makes a beeline for my character's neck. And it was a really scary moment. And the Crimson Heads back then were kind of like glass cannons, where it didn't take much to put them down, but they did a lot of damage. And you kind of had to be smart as a player and go, okay, these things can be prevented by setting them on fire, so Jill's grenade launcher or Chris's lighter, but you had to be smart. Do I want to waste these resources preventing this Crimson Head from returning, or should I save these resources for another area that might be a little bit bigger, that might be more difficult, that might be more important? So it was a really cool part of resource management, figuring out should I waste this stuff or be smart and maybe use it later. So having the Crimson Heads come back is something I would love to see. I don't know how you would change them. Maybe you take them from being glass cannons to being, just cannons that are fast and can do damage, and maybe adding a dodge system that could allow you to avoid the Crimson Heads if you don't want to face them head on could be pretty interesting, but I would love to see them return. Next would be expanding upon the lore, which just makes sense. The original RE1 remake did that by adding in new things like Lisa Trevor, which, if you know the backstory of Lisa Trevor, it's incredibly heartbreaking and sad, and this poor girl who was experimented on is just looking for her mom. That's all she wants. And eventually you get to the end of her story where she takes her own life just out of pure heartbreak and sadness. So I think doing stuff like that by adding some humanity kind of to these monsters and making you feel more empathy for them is smart. Maybe you have a monster that, was someone who was really just dastardly and evil and did horrible things, so you're more encouraged to take them out. But also, I would love to see an expansion on Wesker. Show us how Wesker actually came to work at Umbrella. The monsters he helped create, the bioweapons that got spread around in this facility, the creation of the mansion itself, and how the plans came together to get Star's team to this location to essentially enact this experiment and test out these bioweapons. If you ask me, more Wesker is never really a bad thing. So expanding upon Wesker and showing his roots and how he got to be at Umbrella and do the things he did, I think would be really great. Now, the next one that this rumor has is really weird and super vague, which again, if something is very vague on a rumor or from a source, chances are it's not true. But they describe that a third-person camera will be used, but it will be different. Now, how you make a third-person camera different, I really don't know. The only thing I can really think of is having an over-the-shoulder camera like we've been getting in the remakes, but maybe allowing full 360-degree control with that camera. That's all I can really see. Again, this whole list of rumors is really weird. It just really doesn't really make all that sense to me. And they do mention, again, slower pace, which makes sense for RE1. It's survival horror. It's meant to build up suspense and tension, and it's kind of like a whodunit too, because if you're new to the franchise, you don't really know that Wesker is the one behind all of this stuff, and you're not really quite sure who you can trust. So again, it's about that exploration of the mansion, the courtyard, the underground caverns, the Umbrella facility. But just because it would be slower paced doesn't mean you can't have those high-octane moments, which I think would be reserved for the boss battles. Yawn the Snake, when you first encounter it in the attic, it could be this really dark, dank environment where you hear and feel something crawling around, but you don't see it right away until it inevitably returns in the library section where you put it down for good. And then there's one of my personal favorites, which is Neptune the Shark, which could be really atmospheric and spooky, especially in the RE engine, which everything should be all rendered in real time. There wouldn't be a need for pre-rendered backgrounds anymore. You would have all of this stuff rendered out and ready to go, which is what Resident Evil has been doing with, all of their previous remake games. So you imagine you get to like the underground area and it's flooded and it's dark and dank. There's some broken lights hanging from the ceiling and you don't see Neptune, but you can see ripples in the water. You can hear something is around you, but you don't see it until it lunges out at you to try and attack you. That could be something that could be really scary. And if done right, could be a really awesome jump scare moment where it leads into that high octane battle with Neptune the Shark. So I think keeping those action set pieces for the boss battles and then allowing you to kind of come down a little bit as you go back to exploring and fighting regular zombies would be a really great way to kind of keep the pace of the game feeling fresh and not stagnant. And if everything is rendered in real time, it should be relatively seamless. So by the time you reach the Umbrella facility, which I'm hoping doesn't have that clean, sterile look that the Remake facilities have, I really love the old school, dirty, dank, industrial kind of vibe that these labs had. I think that just makes sense because it's Umbrella. This is their first time like really experimenting with this stuff and enacting their plans. So I would assume their facilities would look really dark and nasty and not super sterile and clean. So I would love a return to that. But again, if this is seamless, by the time you make your way to the Umbrella facility, you should be able to run all the way back to the opening part of the game with, you know, the hallway in the mansion without any load times or anything getting in your way. Which again is what Resident Evil has been doing with a lot of their remakes, RE4, RE Village, as I used in examples in prior videos, of these open areas that aren't necessarily massively open world, where they're big enough to justify having a, you know, open world-esque kind of experience. So with that being said, that is the video. Again, these are all just rumors, which are pretty much going to be false probably. And again, a lot of these rumors and the way they've been received by the source just seem really fishy. But either way, it's a really cool jumping off point to talk about the future of Resident Evil. And if Capcom should remake this game one day, how would it turn out? But with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below, if Capcom were to remake this game, what would you like to see them do in terms of lore, expanding on characters, enemies, gameplay, all of that great stuff. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.